Hi everyone, this is Sarah Whitaker.
And Salty Dalty.
Here for another episode of Working the World. Here for episode 13, we'll be talking about fitness and health in professional wrestling industry, and what its history has been like to its greatest champions. Be sure to find us on most of your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube at Working the World 0240. Because we've been having such good success with the podcast, I've turned my personal page into a wrestling page.
Mm-hmm. That's quite exciting to hear.
It's quite exciting to hear because, I mean, we've been getting a lot of good feedback, even though we haven't gotten a lot of hits from our podcast, and I wanted to make sure that we could focus on it a little bit more than just having my stuff up there. Even though my class stuff is fun to see because it is wrestling related, but
including that photo shoot that you just did last week with the old salty dog.
Oh yes, you'll have to find that on my Facebook. I mean, I'm at Sarah L. Whitaker on Facebook, so if you could see my pretty little face on there, you'll be able to find it fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm. Emphasize pretty little face on there.
Aww. Alrighty, so our jargon of the day. Now that we're talking about health and what it is in the professional wrestling industry.
And as well as fitness, too.
Well,
let me go ahead and get my little tricep flex in there.
Flex, 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 flex.
Actually, the shirt might be covering up in my good triceps, the left one, which unfortunately got off camera here, but that's all right.
Alrighty, so jargon of the day is blown up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically fatigued, you don't have any wind.
You're a heaving hog.
Yeah,
you can't get any wind in because you do not have the ability to get any air in your lungs because you have not trained them to be able to withstand the, pardon me, I've got a little bit of a head cold I'm recovering from. Basically because you're out of shape and you don't have the ability to, go endurance-wise for an extended period of time.
Like Ultimate Warrior after he shakes the ropes.
Runs to the ring, shakes the ropes, does not pause at all, hit 3 clothesline, press slam, press slam, big splash. I almost botched that there. Well, kind of. We don't need to let them know that, even though we're going to leave this on. But
why not?
Yeah, why not? Hit the ring, hit the ropes, 3 clothesline, gorilla press slam, big splash, cover, run to the back, get an oxygen mask tattooed to your face. Oxygen mask, like I said, this head cold still kind of bugging me a little bit.
Well, our other jargon of the day, speaking of the Ultimate Warrior, is on the gas.
Yep. Completely breaking the modern USADA policy in UFC. Basically, that means beyond performance-enhancing drugs, steroids, whatnot.
Yeah, so we'll be talking a little bit more about that later in the podcast, but right now, I just want to talk about the basics. Mm-hmm. What does it take physical-wise in order to be in professional wrestling?
You gotta have good lungs, you gotta be able to have good wind, you gotta be able to have legs, because even if your lungs give out before your legs, you still have legs you can lean on. Basically, because I can go ahead and talk about this in a professional sense, because I actually brought this for the show. They don't make these anymore, but I'm actually a certified personal trainer. I work for Genesis Health Clubs, which, hey, if you're interested in a membership there, go to genesishealthclubs.com. They'll be able to hook you up there. But I wanted to say that, especially since I've gotten certified and, learned a lot about physical exercise, physical fitness, how to, do exercise technique, programming, whatnot properly, it's made me a better professional wrestler because I actually know what the heck I'm doing now, as opposed to just taking advice from this wrestler here, this wrestler here, this wrestler here, this wrestler here, trying to mirror it and, end up getting myself hurt or overtrained or whatnot.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed, especially when I was first starting out, is that regular exercise does not give you the wind in order to do professional wrestling.
You need a combination of zone 1 cardio, which would be akin to doing low intensity steady state, but you also got to be able to have wind in the form of high intensity interval training, like doing short bursts for a short period of time at maximum intensity, then dialing it back, recovering, then going again. Basically kind of like sprints. You got to be able to have the cardio of a marathon runner as well as a sprinter at the same time, as well as a lot of functional strength and power. Because if you don't have functional strength and power and you're trying to pick people up and slam them down, you're going to end up hurting them, not putting them down flat. Like land them on their shoulder, land them on their hip, land them on their rear end, feet first, on their, okay, you're not going to be able to have the strength to be able to stabilize them if you're picking somebody up and slamming them down, if you don't have the ability to withhold their body weight. And also that goes in with the wind, because that takes a lot of air out of you to even pick somebody up and do it or take it.
Well, I mean, isn't it like getting, I'm not sure if is it 25 or 35 miles an hour?
15 mile an hour rear end.
Rear end. Well,
Yes.
when you get slammed into the ring.
And that's just the ring. Like, don't get me started on taking bumps on the floor. It's even higher because that has less give, obviously, than the ring. And, in Japan, like, good Lord, they, like, when I watched Kenta Kobashi take, like, a tiger suplex or a tiger bomb off the apron to the floor with the mat peeled away, I'm like, how are you still walking after this? Because, that's not only hard on your spine, but also your spinal cord and your central nervous system.
Alrighty. Well, since we're talking about Japan and we're getting into the history of things, what is the history of health and fitness in professional wrestling?
Well, it ties in. These guys were legitimately trained athletes. They were shooters. They had, great strength about them. Like George, the Russian Lion Hackenschmidt, was one of the, actually competed in the first officially sanctioned pro wrestling world heavyweight title match against, I believe, Frank Gotch, and in the original Madison Square Garden. George Hackenschmidt invented the hack squat, which is not the machine, but think of doing a deadlift with the bar behind you instead of in front of you. And he invented the bench press because he figured that, doing on the floor wasn't deep enough to be able to give him the strength that, or stretch on his pecs that he needed. And he had a nice big barrel chest. And, he's like, okay, if I go deeper, I can actually get more muscle with this. So he actually took a couple boxes next to a rack and invented what's now known as the bench press. But it's one in there, because like you can have like different types of physiques in pro wrestling. Like you could look at a guy like a Farmer Burns or a Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, who is very lean, not the biggest guy in the world, but could just go. But they had the strength to be able to pick guys up and handle them. Or you could be like a George Hackenschmidt or a Sailor Art Thomas in their days, where they just had unbelievable strength and all that, but they had the wind to go along with it, but that's more what they were famous for.
So when would you say that it went from true physical fitness and prowess to more of a showman-like bodybuilding?
Perfect example, superstar Billy Graham, and that would have been late 60s, early 70s. Even though there were a lot of guys in the territory era that had, really massive physiques and, were in really, really good shape, but nobody had seen anybody like superstar Billy Graham before. I mean, he was Mr. Teenage America at age of 19, I think, and then after that, he went and got trained by Stu Hart up in Calgary after Dr. Jerry Graham enticed him to come into the business, and went up to Calgary, got trained by him. According to Superstar, Stu didn't show him a darn thing in the ring. He just stretched him the entire 5 or 6 weeks he was there and just threw him in the ring without actually showing him, okay, this is how you put it on. So that was Superstar's words, but nobody had looked anything like Superstar Billy Graham. And of course, he was on steroids. Let's not kid ourselves. He was open about it. He admitted it. But at the same time, he had that strength and, he understood psychology. So he was actually able to stand out in that regard as well. But he still had that physique that he was famous for. Let's not kid ourselves. He was the original body guy.
So, when did the larger than life psychology and the use of drugs start to become more mainstream in professional
Superstar.
wrestling? After yes, but Superstar, but it's like he seemed to be like one of the few that actually did it, but and then more people started to get more physique wise rather than just going for a shooter's body.
Well, I'll give you a great example. A lot of these guys, from what I understand, because you got to understand the history of performance-enhancing drugs as well as when they were starting to be utilized in athletics. The first synthetic testosterone was invented in 1939, and that was invented out of necessity during the middle of World War II when all the concentration camp victims, before they came back home, they wanted to improve their physical condition because if they saw that the shape that these people were in after being in concentration camps and being starved, their theory on it would be that there would be another World War III. So that testosterone was invented synthetic-wise in 1939 to be able to beef these people back up and get them going and eating again because they basically had been suffering from wasting disease for like however long. And then in 1955, after a couple years of the Americans getting their butts kicked over in the Olympics by the Russians, because the Russians were using a lot of testosterone for their Olympic weightlifting team, the United States went to SIBA, which was a pharmaceutical company at the time, saying, hey, give us a drug that's so powerful that will beef our Olympic athletes up and strengthen them up that will beat the Russians in the Olympics. And then they created Dianabol, which was the first readily available oral steroid created. And, that was finally outlawed in the, I believe, the late 80s in the Olympics because, like, the records that were set in 1988 in the Olympics have not been surpassed yet. And I think that was the last Olympics that they had before everything went on the banned substance test because they figured these guys are going to be killing themselves trying to, defend their country in the Olympic Games. We need to step in here because it's just going to, it's delegitimized and have, demoralized the Olympics where it's about fairness instead of trying to get, an edge in any way you can.
Now, especially with kayfabe, do you think that their need to promote the product as a legitimate sport came into view when the steroid trials were starting to go forth?
Well, I wouldn't say make it more like legitimate sport, but I would say get away from the guys who had that kind of a look. Like, because that around that time of that steroid trial, you see smaller guys like Brett and Sean starting to get promoted that had the smaller, leaner physiques as opposed to a Hogan, a Warrior, a Dino Bravo. But then again, when they kind of eased off of it, you kind of started seeing those big guys come again because after a couple of years of having the heat put on them and financial distress, they're like, okay, we got to eliminate drug testing. We can't afford to keep doing this. The government's office. Let's go ahead and do that. And Shawn Michaels wrote about that in his book too. It's like, okay, we're going to stop the drug testing and try to save some money here because we got to keep our doors open as opposed to, we already beat the government. We'll just go ahead and, do whatever. Guys, don't go out and kill yourselves, basically.
Right.
But we're not going to drug test anymore. But you can look at one or two ways on this, especially because of what happened. Yeah, you want to protect the talent because obviously with steroids, there is a risk to reward ratio on every single one of them from synthetic testosterone to, something as harsh as tren. It's like, let's not kid ourselves. Anytime that you take a synthetic substance of any kind, it's either going to affect you positively and negatively. It's just a matter of how much of each it will. But on the other side, you could look at it as, well, pro wrestling is an entertainment industry and not a legitimate, sporting contest. It's an exhibition. So on that regard, they shouldn't have to drug test these guys because of, it being not them competing for legitimate, like, gold medals or trophies or anything like that. It's them trying to enhance their look or possibly, because the thing that drugs, like I mentioned, were originally invented for was recovery from wasting disease, putting muscle back on your frame, trying to get your hormone levels back to somewhat normal, because you can look at it through either scope and have a legitimate argument, but my philosophy on it personally is each to their own. I will go on record and say I've never taken any testosterone or any Dianabol or any like anabolic substances in that regard. The only thing that I've ever taken was DHEA, which you can get legally over the counter at the vitamin shop for like, I don't know how many bucks, like maybe $20 a bottle, not plugging, just giving, the information on that out. But I was going to say, but that is outlawed in CrossFit because they see that as unfair. I was taking it because my hormone levels had crashed at the time, and I felt like I need to be able to get my brain firing again, and DHEA is the precursor to all other hormones in the body, so it's something that's going to help me naturally produce more of my own hormones. And it was very easy to get off of because I just pretty much killed my adrenal system by, not having a good diet and drinking so much caffeine, which
right.
I hope I would have learned from by now.
Well, let's go on to other drugs that in the professional wrestling that got into the system of the workers, especially painkillers.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you're putting the damage on your body day in and day out. And for some people, it was like 4 days a week, 5 days a week.
Even back in like the 80s, they were working 7 days a week, twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday. And, Jake the Snake Roberts even said it's like having a little bit of painkillers and a little bit of steroids in your system combined would help you recover better. That was, if they knew what we know now, it's like, yeah, but it also wears down your internal organs doing that nonstop and not being able to, stop, because eventually, because Kurt Angle was talking about how bad it was with Vicodin, because after a while it stops having the same effect on you if you take one or two. Then you get to the point where you're taking like 55 a day and chewing them up like he was.
Alrighty, so let's talk less about the mainstream and let's talk about the indies.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's not a lot of regulation, there's not a lot of
Wild West.
Wild West, especially when it comes to health. Like you see people that might have heart attacks in the ring. You see really skinny dad bods. You see all sorts of
all kinds of shape and sizes, which I've probably been most of them, except for like ultra steroid jacked in my career, because when I got started I was 106-7 pounds with no muscle on me, but I had six-pack abs. And I beefed all the way up to 253, where I was a big fat slob. Then I trimmed down to about 205, 210, which I had actually quite a bit more muscle in my frame and had the abs again. Then I was like, screw abs, I want to get big again. So then I went back up to about 270, cut down to 239, 240, then bulked all the way up to about 285 until, because the way I did that was, I don't recommend doing this, but gallon of milk a day. And yes. It's an old school bodybuilding, powerlifting thing, because I figure it's like, okay, I want to beef up before, I go and start training people. So I did GoMad until I got sick and threw up all over your mom's car because of the phlegm that I was getting produced.
Whoops.
Yep. And then I trimmed down to about maybe 255, and then I've kind of levitated for a while, but about in the mid 270, high 280 range, which is about where I'm at right now. But I bulked all the way up this last August to 305 because, I'd been off for a while. I wanted to put some more muscle, especially on my shoulders and my arms to help protect my injuries there because I got this bone chip right here. Got a torn supraspinatus. The more muscle I can have on those areas, the better. And it helped a little bit, but now I'm down to like that mid 270, high 280 range, depending on the day. Depends on how much I'm drinking too, but
So,
but let's go ahead and get back on like the indies as far as like seeing all kinds of shapes and sizes, because it's kind of like the indies is each to their own, shall I say? Because you got guys that go and are trying to get signed. They're training really hard. Some of them are using drugs, some aren't. Some guys are, really thin. They're just doing it for fun, but that makes them unique because everybody knows them, wants to come see them wrestle, and they kind of have that like Mick Foley-esque, like, connection with the people. It's like he's one of the common people, or Dusty Rhodes. Mm-hmm. And then you have people that are their size too that have that same effect. I mean, it's like, as far as like health and fitness goes, like I've gotten in the ring with some guys, I don't know about you, that you would imagine that they blow up in 2 minutes and they don't blow up the entire match. Mm. I mean, because a perfect example, I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to our boy Angus Kaiser. He's about in the 450 range, and I wrestled him back in our last LWE show was 2021. And I set up the match to where, okay, because I don't know how good this guy's wind is. I've never wrestled him before. I want to go ahead and see, not necessarily test him, but, see, it's like, okay, is he going to blow up on me? Is he not? And we went out there. He did not tire out at all. I had him pick me up, slam me. I had him, splashing me and whatnot, and, took a couple bumps for me. That dude hung in there with me, and I've seen him wrestle 25, 30 minutes without blowing up, especially at his size. You'd be absolutely impressed with how much wind that he has. I mean, it's like, that ain't no, in the words of Stone Cold Steve Austin, that ain't no beer belly. That's a fuel tank full of whoop ass right there.
Woohoo! Alrighty.
But what was the next subject that you wanted to go over with me?
Quick blurb about your own training regimen, since you talked about how you went up and down in weight. I mean, It's like, I know you do a lot of sled pushes for wind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for legs and wind. My training has gone through several different phases. Like, when I first started, I just, focused on... when I first started, it was Jim, not going to give a plug here, just giving you information, Jim Stepani's Shortcut to Size. I did that for about 2 years, and it helped me get up to that 250 range, except that I was trying to put on too much weight too quickly. And then when I injured my back doing deadlifts, and I had some knee problems, it's like, I think I might want to switch to something else, but still try to get big. So something I got turned on to was high intensity training, not high intensity interval training, that's going to come later. Dorian Yates high intensity training, not the Mike Mentzer one that's becoming famous again, but basically you just pyramid up to one heavy set per muscle group to failure and beyond. Like if you're doing like a great example, leg press, you're going to go ahead and like, okay, start with like maybe 3 plates to warm up, maybe add, say your max is 7 plates on there for like 6 to 8 reps, or what you're not doing. So you go ahead, do like as many warm-up sets. So I might start with 3, then I might throw 2 on more, do 5, do that for like 10 reps each set, then go ahead and throw on that 7. I just do 1 set of maximal intensity, which worked for an extended period of time, until my body started breaking down, because I'm going to give a PSA right now as a personal trainer. If you don't go and take a deload, you are making a big mistake, because you need to cycle your training around so you give not only your joints and your muscles a break, but your central nervous system. If you try to do that all year round, you're going to burn out and get injuries. You need to work in a break you can do.
Alrighty.
But to get closer to what I'm doing now, I experimented with biomechanics training with Doug Brignoli, which helped for a while too, but I wasn't quite getting the results long term that I wanted to get on there, but it did help. But I've kind of circulated back to powerlifting. And I'm doing like heavy sets of 3 and 5s, and on squat and bench, I'm doing those sled pushes. But I'm really focusing on strength and power right now, but working in like that high intensity intervals on, say, the sled pushes. I'm trying to do that to get my wind up so I can be able to do those for an extended period of time. And I adjust the rest time each week. Yeah, I know it's 25 minutes and
Alrighty.
still have a second. So.
It's time to go home.
It's time to go home.
Yes, it's time to go home.
Well, I'll go ahead and say after this, because I know that today's kind of me giving my insight a little bit more on the show, since I'm kind of the expert on this. But guys, you don't have to be 300 pounds jacked up on steroids, especially if you don't want to get in a pro wrestling ring. But you need to be in some kind of physical shape. You need to be able to have some kind of baseline and strength, and you got to be able to have some kind of stability and endurance to make sure that you don't hurt people in the ring. When I say in shape, stay in shape, get in shape, that's the kind of shape I mean.
Alrighty. Remember to find us on most of your favorite podcast platforms, as well as YouTube at Working the World 0240. And if you're wondering why the 0240, that's the patient number on Salty Dalty's Scrubs.
In case you were wondering why, that's the case, mind if I give one more little anecdote before we go?
One quickie.
All right. I wanted it to be Salty Dalty 24 because I wanted the 24 because my favorite race car driver's number was 24, Jeff Gordon. They didn't have that for availability, so I just put 0 on each end.
Awesome. Alrighty. Stay classy, peeps. Until next week, nanu.
Shoot the half.
Shoot that half.
'Cause I